Hey everybody, it's Eric with Low VA Rates. Today we're going to talk about the cons or the downsides. You know, we like to tell you the pros and the cons of everything so that you can make an educated decision. The downsides of restarting your 30-year loan when you do an IRRRL or any refinance for that matter. As I'm sure you're aware, it's Friday. We all know when it's Friday. Our week's coming to an end, but also you see me wearing red. And if you could look around our office, everybody's wearing red today. We do that because red stands for Remember Everyone Deployed. And speaking of red, there might be a red subscribe or follow or some sort of a button down to your right as you're looking at your computer. Please follow along. Become a fan, become a follower so that you get these videos every single Friday when they come out. You know, the other day I was kind of debating, if you will, back and forth on one of our other YouTube videos with a client or with a fan or with somebody. Maybe he was a hater. I don't know who it was, but we always invite this back and forth dialogue. And he said that in his opinion, he's entitled to that opinion, that he thought we were potentially misleading or purposely not explaining enough information to our borrowers and to our followers that every time you refinance, if you go back to a 30-year mortgage, like that's a bad thing. Or at least we should explain all of the reasons why you might consider not starting your amortization over back at 30 years, and maybe you should start at a shorter term. He had some valid points. However, I of course defended low VA rates and why most people go back to a 30-year loan. I have refinanced both rental properties and primary residences of my own. I'm a civilian, I didn't serve, and I've gone back to a 30-year mortgage almost all of the times I've refinanced. So I took a little bit of offense isn't the word, but I debated this with him for a little bit, and I promised him, or her, I don't know who it was, we're gonna do a video on this. So let's go back and look at essentially the argument or the debate is, let's say someone's been in their mortgage for 3 years, so they've got 27 years left on their mortgage, and then rates drop. That's happening right now, and they want to refinance. It doesn't matter if it's a cash out or if it's an IRRRL, but they want to refinance to a lower rate. The question is, should they stay on a 27-year loan or should they go back to a new 30-year loan? Okay, I'm just gonna get this done right out of the gate. Because of the way in which a new law was written in 2018, it's Senate Bill 2155. Part of that bill includes the Protecting Veterans from Predatory Lending Act. We know all about that here at Low VA Rates. One of the reasons why you almost always have to go back to a 30-year loan, which this gentleman or this person did not know, is because the law was written in a way that makes you take a higher term on your refinance than your existing term in order to get approved for the loan. And we've got other videos on that, and if we don't, I'll have my team put together the time where I can record another video on that. But I'm just gonna tell you right out of the gate, if you try to do a shorter term on your VA Streamline, you will likely not meet what's called the recoup. Because when you go to a smaller term, your principal and interest goes up because you now have less time to pay off your loan. But I don't wanna digress. One of the things that this gentleman said is, hey, look, if you go back to a 30-year mortgage, whether you've got 27 years left or 25 years left or 20 years left, going back to a 30-year mortgage, you're going to pay more interest. Well, why would he think that? Because you're now gonna go and you're gonna have 360 new payments on your mortgage. That's what a 30-year mortgage is, it's 360 payments. Well, that's not necessarily true, because if we're dropping your interest rate enough, even though you're gonna pay an additional 3 years that you've already paid, the lower interest rate almost always allows you to pay less interest over time. Now his argument, if we went into more detail, what would be fun is to actually have that guy come in. We'll do a little deal where we're both on the screen together and we'll go back and forth. But I wanna be fair. He's probably saying, well, yeah, but guess what? If you give me the lower rate and the shorter term, so let's compare apples to apples, I will pay less interest. He is correct. There's two ways you can pay less interest. Get a lower interest rate and borrow for a lower term. So I hope you can see that there's two sides to that coin. There's two sides to that argument there. However, what we have found is most veterans want the lowest possible payment. And the way you get the lowest possible payment is to go back to a 30-year loan. I don't want you to forget the lower term also makes it hard to meet parts of that new law. Now, the second thing, he mentions when you do a refinance, you're going to pay closing costs. Well, yes, you're going to pay closing costs if you refinance to the lowest rate possible. There are ways, and his argument was, and because those closing costs get rolled into your loan, because that's what we profess and teach here at Low VA Rates, you're now not only going back to a longer term, you're now paying interest on those closing costs. Again, he's correct. But what is the alternative? To just not refinance, stay at the higher rate? You can do that, but I'm going to pull out a calculator here in a minute. I'm going to do some basic math, and you can borrow more money, you can have a longer term, and you can still pay a lot less for your mortgage. But we always give the veterans here at Low VA Rates more than one interest rate option. For example, today, maybe the lowest rate you can get here at Low VA Rates is 2.25%. With closing costs and everything else, maybe the APR is 2.5%. These are just examples. If somebody wants the 2.25, maybe they're going to have $5,000 in closing costs, and that's what this gentleman was concerned about. If they want, they can take a 2.75% rate at a 2.75 APR. Now, why would the APR and the rate be the same? Because this would have no closing costs. So there's zero closing costs. Well, you're borrowing $5,000 less here, to his point, but you're also taking a higher interest rate. There's a risk reward there. It's impossible to compare apples to apples when you're talking about closing costs. Some people, if they're going to be in their home for a long time, they choose to pay closing costs because they want the lower rate and the lower payments. If you're going to be selling your home soon, yeah, you might take a higher interest rate with less closing costs. So this argument, I really couldn't follow him on that, and I wasn't sure what he was talking about because closing costs are variable. You don't have to pay them if you take a higher interest rate. Now, his last argument was, look, and this is pretty obvious, if every few years you refinance and you always go back to a 30-year mortgage, you're either never going to pay off your mortgage or it's going to take longer. I kid you not, 20 years. I just aged myself, but 20 years doing VA streamlines. Started out as a loan officer and moved my way up the ranks. I have yet, in all of my experience, ever known a veteran or a civilian, family members or not, who went and got a 30-year mortgage originally. Now ask yourself this question, and if somebody's watching this video and knows somebody, put me in touch with them. We'll fly out and film at their house because this will be absolutely mind-boggling if you guys know anybody like this. Here's my argument to this one. Name a person that you know that went and bought a house 30 years ago and got a mortgage. What was 30 years ago? Somebody help me with the math here. 2020, I don't do math, guys. I'm a mortgage guy. You get my point. But if you go 30 years in the past and you go buy a house for $100,000 and you start making mortgage payments for 30 years, let's just happen to say you paid $225,000 for your house. That's all you paid because of the interest in the 30 years worth of payments. Do you know anybody who got a mortgage 30 years ago, made 360 payments, never refinanced, never moved, never sold the house? That doesn't exist. Now, I'm sure it exists somewhere out there, but my parents came up through the Depression. My parents didn't take on debt. I spoke to my dad about this many, many years ago when I first made this claim because I wanted to say, well, I hope I'm not saying something that's not true. My parents don't have a mortgage anymore. They paid their house off years ago, but they didn't make 360 payments at the exact same interest rate. They refinanced. They came into a lump sum at retirement and paid their whole balance down. So look, why am I stuck on this? Because this is just an invalid argument. Most people will never pay off their home in full. They'll live there for 7 years. Rates will drop, so they'll refinance or they'll sell. And yes, to this gentleman's argument, if every time they refinance, they just stick with the lower term, certainly they'll pay less interest. So I hope this was beneficial to the guy or the gal who called me out on YouTube. Thank you. We love starting conversations like this. If you're watching this new video and I have missed something, reach out to me. We'll do kind of a one of those YouTube calls where we got the split screen and we'll both go back and forth. We appreciate you trying to make sure that all of our veterans are well educated. I don't think there's a better educated group of people out there as it comes to VA when it comes to VA loans than those that follow along Low VA Rates on YouTube. So I hope that was beneficial. Thanks for watching. Next Friday, I'll have another Red Friday video for you guys. Keep watching and keep tuning in.